Um, so yes, my short presentation today will focus on or will include, let's say, like three big words. So one is phenomenology, or this phenomenological perspective. Phenomenology is, of course, like a discipline or field in philosophy, but it's also like a research method, and it's also, I think, a very promising attitude, or yeah, an approach to work with patients, with clients, when we really are trying to give or to create a space in which they can share their story, or their meaning making story and understanding. So the next big words that I will use today is personal religiosity. Um, I mean, of course, we know that there is a great disagreement and inconsistency in the literature on how we use the words spirituality, religiosity, spirituality, religion. But when I will be using this, it describes kind of like an individual's understanding, and the way how like an individual, a person, creates meaning around, or creates the attitude and the values around one's own religiosity. And then the third big word is the suicidal process, which includes, of course, not only a suicide as a final act, but it's very dynamic. So it's a process. There is a lot of dynamics, and I would really, my invitation is to look on the suicidal process as something that's dynamic, and it's constantly developing and changing in the experience of a person. So I think I mean, everyone is quite familiar with the fact that suicide is a great global challenge. So over 700,000 people die by suicide every year. That means 40 people every second. And to me, those are big numbers that I always struggle to really understand. But just to give us maybe a bit more of understanding in smaller numbers. So I was given 15 minutes maximum for that presentation, and that's 900 seconds. That means during the time of my speech, based on those statistics, around 22 people, approximately 22 people will die by suicide. So suicide is the third globally, but in Slovenia, the second leading cause of that among young people. And what is especially concerning is just like a recent, which was recently found out, that we have a great increase of suicide, especially among young girls between the age of 10 and 40. And that was evident in the all regions of the World Health Organization. A lot of research was done on the suicide, and we have quite good understanding of what are preventive and risk factors, if I may use the expression. So we do have quite good understanding or profile of a person who might be experiencing suicidal distress. So we know it's more likely to be men in middle age, or like towards older age, that this person or single have a history of mental illness, especially depression. But all this data still doesn't help us to really understand the experience, or even to, just if walking down the street, it doesn't really help us to see, to find the people who might be needing support. So what we know from Joiner's interpersonal theory on suicide is that what consists so what is needed, or what is behind the suicide action, is the will to die, which is experienced as a source of belongingness and perceived burdensomeness on others, but that's also the capability to make an action, to self-harm, is requires to make that action. Speaking about religiosity and spirituality, as I said, when I will be presenting that and speaking about that, that's kind of like an individual experience. What people included in my research talked about, so they use the term faith, and seems like they describe the best how they experienced religiosity. Yes, so that would be the way how I understand religiosity when speaking about that. Um, Religion is generally seen as preventive factor, but we of course do have some data on the fact could be risk factor as well. So in that research that results that I'm presenting today, I have used phenomenology as a research method. More exactly, was interpretative phenomenological analysis that was used, and people included, so the patients included in that research was people recently admitted to the crisis unit of psychiatric hospital with a lived experience of suicide attempt. So in that research, we were interested to better understand how did those participants, or how did the patients make sense of the experience of their suicide attempt, and what role did they attribute to the religion. So how did they see that in that process, in that experience, what kind of role did their own faith, did their own religion play? So looking at that that graph, or that graphic presentation here, if you have a look on the left part, you see the individual context. So that part describes the past of a patient. So that's kind of like a context of a single patient. So that's a story of one's upbringing, the values, all the past experience that kind of like developed the way how they see or they experience faith, and what kind of role they were placing into, or what they were looking for, or what they were speaking about when they talked about their own faith. With those 6 numbers that you see here, hopefully you can see it well. So we have them from 1 to 6. These are the 6 themes of that qualitative research, of that qualitative analysis. And when talking about the context of an individual, we were able to see that the faith, in a way, was presented as a foundation for trust in oneself. So the faith was seen as as a source of hope and connectedness, in some cases even attachment. So the way how people understood the role of religion was very strongly connected to their personal life stories, so to their, to their past. If I give a very concrete example, one of the patients who experienced a lot of trauma of abuse, she was she spent her childhood in a foster family. There was a lot of abuse, and what she was looking for in her own faith, in that relationship with God and with everyone that was in her map of people connected to her understanding or experience of faith and religion, she was looking for security. And and some other things in some different life stories. So then continuing with this individual's understanding of faith, we have that theme that's trying to describe faith as an added source of strength for coping with distress. So that was very concretely, different people were using different coping coping sources they found in religion, either being things that we know from already existing research, such as prayer, or church attendance, or like trying to find a place or looking for communities or groups, religious groups to belong to, but also like things such as holidays, especially Christmas, was often mentioned as like a very important holidays that gave people a lot of hope for the future. So that was kind of like encouraging people, and they saw that as a very important part of their religious experience. And what we also know from the suicide research is that especially the Christmas and like the time around the holidays, if we seasonally look on the suicide, so days around the Christmas are days with fewer suicide attempts and fewer completed suicides. So there seems to be something that was also seen in that narrative, in that experience of people. Then we have two things when people were turning outwards to the community, and one was trying, and I'm always wondering if that is like really country specific. So what people found very important is that if the church or if the priest really paid attention to people, to the needs of people, and not so much onto the politics, they found that to be something that attracted them, to give them hope, and something that they see as preventive in a way. So they kept closer to the church and to the religion. Whereas on the other side, if people were too much into, if the priests or the church is too much into the politics, into, I don't know, like just, I don't know, building, it's too much into the buildings, not the relationship, that people felt less connected to the religion. So then we have a theme around community, which is something that we know also from the previous research on the religion as a preventive factor in suicide prevention. And that's the thing that describes that how feeling of belongingness to religion at first as an idea, or as just a feeling of being, for instance, Christian in a Christian, when Christianity is predominant religion in a country, that is something that people experienced as, I do belong to that ideology, or I feel close to the values, or those values are also describing my personal values. That was expressed in a way like I do, with the sentences such as I do take 10 commandments as something that describes my own belief system as well. So I feel connected to that idea.
13 and a half.
And then on the sorry,
And
and then
13
on
and a
the
half.
other side, okay, thank you. And then we have a community, so like really strong feeling of being really strongly connected to a community, to have a specific role. In the middle part, you can see a suicidal process, and with this light gray triangle, I tried to show that the protective power of religiosity is inconsistent during this suicidal process. And you have some quotes on the right side that say that suicide is a very lonely act. So at that point of suicide, or just before the suicide attempt, people, we talk about the tunnel view. You might know about that, but nothing really matters. Nothing seems to have a preventive power, because the suicide is perceived and understood as the only way out of this psychological pain. In the experience, in the lived experience of people, of those patients, there was a moment of suicide attempt, and after that there was a moment of hospitalization. And this is the moment where this another very important process started happening again. So that was a process of searching for meaning of that a suicide attempt. So there was a process of integration of that experience, of searching for meaning of that, and that seems to be a process where the religion and religiosity, the faith, plays a very important role once again. And that was seen and described in sentences such as, "I do believe God has faith in me," because he would never, given me that experience if he wouldn't believe I can overcome that. There was a moment when people started looking back to see the community, to see how they find ways to connect to people and to be a part of, something bigger again. But especially that seems to be that relationship with God, and that's, the experience has a meaning, and this faith that, that is something okay. And the person, it seems to be a sort of faith and hope once again, that the person can overcome, the life has meaning, and everything will be okay. That's my final slide, and my final, probably a takeaway message would be that it's really, the suicidal process itself is very dynamic process, but also I think we need to look on protective power of religiosity as a part of this like very dynamic happening that is happening in a person. So it's maybe I think I've reached my 15 minutes here.